back in the end of August, Google announced this helpful content update, which is a major algorithmic update, and it kind of took everybody by surprise because they hadn't been talking about this update a lot, but they also provided a lot of really good information about what they're doing and some things we can do to get ready for it. And we've taken that information and created some resources that I'll share with you today. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking to you about what this is all about. And, you know, it's interesting. We got our start 23 years ago almost in B2B marketing. And back 23 years ago, search engine optimization was really all a B2B company could do to market their business on the internet. And so we were really big into SEO back then, and it's been a key part of our practice ever since then. And so this is always interesting whenever there's a major algorithmic update to think about, oh my gosh, what's this going to do to our rankings? What is this going to do to our client rankings, et cetera? And so it's always a little nerve-wracking. But as I mentioned earlier, this is actually, I think, a good one, and I'll get more into that here in a little bit. You can see there in the agenda right here, I've actually got a link to the official announcement from Google, so be sure to check that out. But before I get too far into it, why is Google doing this? Well, there's a couple of interesting things going on, and you guys are probably experiencing some of this on your own already, and that is that man, Google is just getting full of two things. One, a lot of spam, and also just a ton of ads. And so that's actually creating some challenges for Google. And it's interesting. I was doing some research and getting ready for the webcast today. And, I found a quote by Larry Page, one of the founders of Google, from like 1998 or 1999, where he talked about how running ads on search engines was actually ultimately doomed to fail because it creates bias towards advertisers and not bias towards good results. And so one of the crazy things about search engine optimization is when I got started back in 2000, Google really wasn't a household name like it is today. It was really Yahoo and Lycos and AltaVista, believe it or not. And Google and those search engines were actually getting pretty spammy when Google hit the scene. And for many years, Google didn't have ads on their search results, and people loved Google. Well, now 20 plus years later, we're starting to see Google fighting the same battles that really caused them to come out, like a phoenix 22 years ago. And that is that, there's a lot of ads in their search results. And I think a lot because of this AI copywriting that's going on today, and just the desire for people to rank really well in search, is people are creating content like crazy, and that content, and they're designing the content mainly to rank well in Google, but not necessarily thinking about the user. And so all of this is really about them fighting the spam that's showing up in their search results, and to get users to come back and use Google more and more. And trying to find that good balance between their advertising revenue and actually serving the customer. And, an interesting stat that you can see there is this big challenge that they're dealing with is the younger crowd, the 18 to 24 crowd, is actually not using Google as their search engine anymore. They're not Googling it, right? Google is a verb, but they're actually, I guess, Instagramming it or TikToking it, which is mind-boggling to me. But I saw an interesting stat that one of the top searches on TikTok right now is actually for like recipes. So imagine this 18 to 24-year-old crowd that are, really kind of flocking over to TikTok. They're not just doing it to get entertained anymore. They're also doing it to get bite-sized, minute videos on how to accomplish things. Like one of the top recipes was how to make a lemon drop or something like that, which is an alcoholic beverage. So what's happening is Google's losing market share to some of this younger crowd that's finding content in a way that that they like better. And so they're trying to fight against that. So that's why this Google Helpful Content Update is happening. And I'm going to walk you through some things we can do to get ready for it. So the good news about this, if you kind of look down on the next item on the agenda there, is for those of us that are really focused on creating remarkable content, content that's really going to help our buyer, and content that's going to be useful and beneficial to them, that's going to answer their questions. that content's going to rank much better moving forward, because what Google's going to really do is try to fight all the spam that's keeping our good content from ranking well. And I can tell you, we're already seeing this. We're kind of in the beginning of Q4, and my account teams, or the people on my gosh, I can't talk today. The people at Vendy that are working with our clients, they're seeing already that really good, remarkable content is getting more traffic. And so that's really good news. So if we're focused on the buyer, focused on our customer, and providing useful information, we should expect that we'll get more traffic from search engines. Now, here's the thing about that. Don't expect that you're going to get a lot of traffic from those highly, highly competitive terms. But more of those what we call long tail terms that have words like, and you'll see this here in a minute, words like how to or best practices or things like that. But that's really the good news. So if you're embracing content marketing and you're really wanting to generate information that's going to be valuable to your buyer, then this should be a good thing for you. So moving on to the next bullet down of just where does search fit into the overall process. In our framework, which we normally walk through when we have these demand gen jam sessions, it's part of our activate your audience phase. And so really search is critical because it's a buyer initiated media. And so the goal of any B2B marketer should be to get our information in front of buyers when they're out there looking for solutions, or when they're in research mode and they're looking for help. And so search is a great way of getting your information in front of that buyer when they're out there looking for help. And so our goal as it relates to that is we want to activate our audience. We want to be there on places that they go to learn when they're trying to learn, but we also want to accomplish a couple of things. And that is, number one, establish authority and basically communicate to them that, yes, we are qualified to solve your problem. But number two, we want to establish trust that, hey, we're trustworthy and we are empathetic. We want to help you solve your problem. So not only can we solve your problem, but yes, we want to solve your problem. And so search is very effective in helping us kind of begin that process. And so when you think about your SEO strategy for 2023, think about, how do I catch, early cycle buyers that are out there just starting to research a problem that they're having, and what might be those words that they would type in to a site like Google or maybe TikTok, but Google for right now. What might they type in to really start the research process and understanding how they can solve this problem? That's really what we want to focus on. That's how we're going to activate our audience in search. So if you go down to the next bullet here, where I've got keys to success, these are some of the key areas. I'm going to focus primarily on content today. And as I've mentioned, I've built a slide presentation specifically about that. But I want to cover a few of these keys to success here that are not necessarily content focused, that when you're thinking about SEO, you really need to be thinking about. The first one is architecture, right? So when we're thinking about our website, we want to make sure that Google can easily crawl all the pages of our site, and that Google has a good understanding as they crawl the different pages of our site, what each page of our site is about. And so that's really key. So oftentimes businesses have websites that are hard to crawl, or Google is not clear really what this particular page is about. And that's what site architecture can really help you with. And I don't have time to go through that today. I've got resources that will help you that I've linked off of this agenda. So I'll point those out here in a little bit. The other thing that we want to focus on when we're thinking about SEO is the on the page thing. So, what are the things that we can do on an article? Think like a blog article or a web page on your website. What are the things that we can do on that page to make it very, very clear to the search engines what this page is about? And so again, we're not going to talk a lot about that today, but this would be things like making sure you have keywords in your headline, making sure you have good metadata, making sure you have good semantic markup. Those are examples of on-page SEO that are important. The next bullet down is URLs. So believe it or not, what you have in your URL really matters. One thing I try to communicate to folks when they're thinking about search engine optimization is that at the end of the day, our search engine algorithms are kind of like investigators, detectives. They're looking for clues. And so when they come to your website, they're trying to figure out, what does this page mean? What is it about? What kind of users could benefit from this page? And so we have to drop clues on the page to make sure that Google understands this page is for this topic. And the more we can drop those clues on the page, that's what on-page SEO is all about, and what that URL is really all about, because you can put the main topic actually in your URL structure. And if you're not doing that, man, that is such an easy win. And so I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you are on WordPress and maybe other web platforms that are out there, but oftentimes, WordPress just natively is going to make whatever your headline or title of that page is, it's going to make it the URL. And that's going to, if you've got your key phrase in the headline, that might be good news. But one thing that I see as a mistake all the time there is that, if you've got 10 words in your headline, all 10 of those words are going to show up in the URL. You may want to reduce that down to where it's just the key phrase or maybe one or two other words in your URL. And so I'm trying not to go down a rabbit trail here, but I could talk for hours on almost every one of these things. So let me go ahead and move on to the next one, which are links. And so, we've talked about architecture. We want Google to be able to crawl all the pages of our site. We've talked about on-page SEO, why our URLs are important. The other thing that we want to do is make sure that we're linking all the content on our website together, so that if I've got article A, but article B over here, or web page B is also helpful as it relates to article A, let's link those two pages together to provide a good user experience, but also to help Google understand that there's more content available on your website about a particular topic. And that would be what we call internal linking. You also need to have a strategy for building external links, which means getting people to link to your website as an authoritative site on a particular topic. So those are still very important today. The next bullet down are keywords. And the thing that I mentioned earlier, where this is heading from, in my opinion, from an SEO perspective, and I'm not talking about paid search here, I'm talking about SEO. The more we can focus on those long tail terms and build content around long tail terms that are early cycle for those buyers, where they're looking for information on how to deal with something that they're trying to deal with, or how to accomplish something that they're trying to accomplish, the better off we'll be. And so when we think about our key phrases from an SEO perspective, phrases that include what, or how to, or guides, or examples, or action plans, or best practices, or tips, or methods, those are the types of key phrases that are going to work. And so imagine taking your primary key phrase, trying to figure out a way to work those in and build content that would be relevant to that key phrase. That's the kind of stuff that's going to rank well in Google moving forward. And so the last one really is the content. And like I said, I've got a whole slide deck on really how to get our content ready for this helpful content update. And I'm going to go to that in just a second, but I am going to come up for air. Andrea, are there any questions that have popped up through that first part that we'd like to address before I jump into the slides?
None in the chat, but a common question that we usually get is, should you buy backlinks?
Should you buy backlinks? That's a great question. So, links are really important. There are ways to buy backlinks today, and that would be, getting basically paying for a website to link to your website. I'm not a big fan of that. And I also don't think that it's going to live for a long time. So what I'm much better fan of, or what I think works a lot better, is to actually create resources that are useful to your buyer and make them available on your website. I'll show you some examples of that here in just a minute. And don't gate them. And so if you've got really good resources and they're available and people can find them, then what's going to end up happening is other websites will start linking to those resources, and you can earn backlinks that way. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Andrea. Any other questions?
Yeah, we just had one here. Tristan asks, how relevant or necessary is putting geo signals in your titles or URLs now for local businesses?
I think and I'm not going to go too much into local search today, but man, if you're a local business, you've got to have the local schema and all that stuff really locked down, and you've got to have your Google My Business, or they just changed the name of Google My Business. I can't remember what it's called now, but you've got to make sure that Google local listing is truly optimized and it's fully complete. And that's critical if you're going to show up on the map pack and things like that. So great question, Tristan. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And like I said, I don't always do slideshows for these demand gen jam sessions. There's a lot to cover today, and so I wanted to go ahead and do that for you guys. I have made these slides available. There's a link to it in the agenda, which we'll come back to in a minute. So why is this really important? Well, the good news is that 90% of buyers are still using Google at some point during the decision-making process. And so, as they're going and trying to make a B2B purchase, they're going to go to Google multiple times during that process to try to find information to help them, and also to find vendors that can really help them accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And so from an SEO perspective, what we really want to focus on are those early cycle buyers and those early cycle queries that they might be typing in to try to understand, wow, what are my options? How am I going to solve this problem? What are other people doing to solve this problem? Those are the types of key phrases we want to focus on. And that's going to really help you from an SEO perspective, but also from a demand gen perspective, because you're going to get those early cycle buyers in. You'll get to communicate your point of view and how you see the world, and how you see the world, how you see solving their problem. And that's really going to set you up as a preferred vendor. So really important platform or channel, if you will. So I did provide a link to the actual announcement, but this is a screenshot of it. And I wanted to highlight this one part right here that just said the reason that they're doing this is to ensure that they are seeing more original content showing up in their search results, and it's content that was written by humans for humans. And so that kind of goes back to why I think this is really good news for us B2B marketers that are really focused on content marketing. And they gave several questions that we could look at to think about our websites. And we've actually created a checklist that I'm going to show you here in a little bit with more questions than what I'm about to walk you through that'll really help you prepare yourself for this update. But here's some of the examples right from the announcement. Number one, it said, think about, does your content clearly demonstrate firsthand expertise and a depth of knowledge? And so what they're really trying to do here is make sure that when we create content, it's something that, this isn't just a key phrase we're trying to get ranking for, but this is a key phrase that we truly are a subject matter expert on and can provide really helpful information to their community or to the folks that are doing searches at Google. The next one is, does your site have a primary purpose or focus? And so again, this is kind of refining that concept of they really want to know that when you write something, you're an expert. And when they crawl your site, they're going to want to know that that topic, that page that they're crawling is related to what your entire website is about. And so back in the olden days, the early days of SEO, we used to talk about concentric circles and optimizing your website and coming up with topics from a concentric circle perspective. And what I mean by that is you would start with, kind of right at the center, the bullseye, if you will. This is what we do. These are the solutions that we provide. Let's write about that. And this is the audience that we serve. Let's write about that. But then we would say, okay, what's one rung away from that? Let's write about those topics too. What's two rungs away from that? Let's write about those topics also, and maybe even go 3 rungs out, or rings out, if you will, from that core. And that worked back in the early days because that would give you more opportunity to get ranking for more key phrases. What's going on now is we want to get rid of that perspective of taking concentric circles and really hone in on the things that we truly are experts in solving for customers. This one is a good one. Will the reader feel like they have learned enough about the topic? And so this is a big fight on spam where, people are wanting to rank well for a particular key phrase. So they figure out, oh, this is an important key phrase, and they write a lot of content about it. Or maybe they research who's showing up on the first page of Google for this topic. And then they try to reverse engineer what worked for those pages and make their page just a little bit more optimized than the other pages that are out there, and hoping that they would get good ranking. And here's the crazy part, that kind of worked. But this new update is really combating that. And what they're saying is, if the reader does a search and they land on your page and they consume the content on your page and they hit the back button and they refine their search and go and look at another page, that's actually potentially a detriment. You want to make sure whatever that query is that you're showing up for, that you're answering that question on the page. So some things we might want to think about stopping immediately are, number one, writing for search engines first and humans second. We can't do that anymore. First of all, it's really bad copy. I've been on many SEO discussions before over the years, and where the SEO person's in the room and they're saying, well, I know this kind of sounds weird, but we need to say it this way because we're trying to get good ranking for this particular phrase. And that's just not going to work anymore. We really have to write our content for the human first. We don't want to write on lots and lots of topics. Stay focused on things where you really are an expert. You don't want to just summarize what other people have written. We have to bring a new perspective, new information to the table, and we can't leave users feeling like they didn't get the answer to the question that they were looking for. So really, the key point to all of this is, when you think about optimizing your website for Google moving forward, it really comes back to good content marketing 101. And good content marketing 101 starts with understanding the 3 to 5 content pillars that really matter to your business, that really matter to your customer, that you are truly an expert on. And then build out your entire content strategy to make sure that every piece of content that you're producing that you want to rank well in Google is actually aligned or connected somehow to those 3 to 5 content pillars. Now, I'm going to give you some access to resources on the agenda that will help you to do a deeper dive on that. But that's really critical. 3 to 5 content pillars, everything that you write really needs to tie back to those. And we did a webinar last month. I actually stole this slide from the webinar. I want you to think like Mr. Miyagi. I'm really going to date myself, but I think this was such a popular movie that probably everybody on the jam session today has seen The Karate Kid. But our content needs to be like Mr. Miyagi. Daniel over there, he had a problem. He needed to solve that problem. He didn't know how to overcome these bullies in his high school, right? And Mr. Miyagi was really skilled in karate and taught him everything that he needed to actually go and win the day. And so when we think about our content marketing strategy, we've got to think like Mr. Miyagi and make sure that we're helping our customer basically win the day. So a critical part of that, when we think about content marketing, is establishing our point of view. And so one thing that this is our point of view development framework I'm going to walk you through. But when you come up with those 3 to 5 content pillars, what you want to do is walk through this question process, because it'll help you think about the different types of content that you want to produce and how to really formulate your point of view on those things. And so for each of your content topics or pillars, if you will, you start with, hey, what's broken as it relates to that? Like, for example, at Vendy, one of our content pillars is demand generation or B2B marketing. And so one of the questions we would ask is, what's broken in B2B marketing? And we could whiteboard that. Oh, this is broken and that's broken and this other thing's broken. Those would all become potentially topics for our content strategy. The next question that we want to ask is, now that we know what's broken, let's ask ourselves, why is that happening? So in B2B marketing, maybe lead generation is broken. So then the next question we would ask ourselves, why do we think that's happening? Why do we think that lead generation is broken for B2B marketers? And we could whiteboard that. And those would become topics that we could write about, for example. So once we understand why that, what's broken and why it's happening, the next thing we would want to think about is, well, how would we fix that? If we were in our customer's shoes, if we were Daniel and we knew that he had this problem and we knew why it was happening, what would be those steps that we would tell Daniel to do in order to fix his problem? And again, those would become topics, and we would want to share it from our perspective. How would we do this if we were in Daniel's shoes? That's really important. We don't want to go to Google and find out how other people would solve this problem. We want to really write about how we would solve this problem for our customer. And then really the last step there is, what is the evidence or proof that shows that our point of view, on why it's happening and how to fix it really does matter, and that this really will work. And if you do that, if you'll work through those 3 to 5 content pillars and ask yourself these questions and really brainstorm and refine the answers, you'll have, man, a rock solid content strategy that will do really well in search moving forward. So a big part of this Google helpful content update, in my opinion, is going to be really not just your content strategy, but your blog strategy. And I'm assuming most of you on the call today or on the jam session today are doing some kind of blogging, but I think blogs are your best opportunity to really capitalize on this algorithmic update. And so if we want to create blogs that establish authority that are going to rank well in Google, we need to make sure that we're providing real business value, that when somebody comes and reads our blog, they did a query, they landed on our page, they consume the information that helped them, even if they don't buy from us today, that was real business value that we provided. Number two, we've talked about this already, that it's aligned with the content pillars that matter to our business. Number three, that we're focused on one problem or one challenge or one opportunity per article. And so, I struggle with this too when I'm writing blogs. I want to write about everything. But the reality is, if we can keep them very topical and very precise on the query and making sure that the article is answering the query and helping the reader, then we'll be much better off. And then number four, just like Mr. Miyagi, we want to position ourselves as the guide, not the hero. Daniel is the hero. Our customer is the hero. We are the backup team, if you will. We're Mr. Miyagi. We're here to really establish Daniel as the hero and give him everything he needs to be equipped to win the day. And so when our blogs do that, we're going to be in a really good position to get those blogs to rank well in Google. And Google loves blogs. I bet you consume a lot more blog content than you actually realize, because so much of Google search results are actually blog topics that are showing up on, when you do a search in Google. So let's kind of break it down. I'm going to walk you through some things that you need to put on the page, if you will, on your blog to really maximize its benefit to the reader, which will then, based on this update, if you're benefiting the reader, you're going to benefit yourself by making sure that you rank well in search. So one of the first things we want to do is have authorship. And so go back and look at your blogs and see if your blogs are actually authored by a person or authored by admin. So a lot of times you'll have blogs out there that just say admin, and you want to make sure they're authored by a person, and you want to have that person be an authority on the topic. So that's an easy step number one. Step number two, we want to make sure that the key phrase that we're going after is included in the headline or the title of the document. We also, you can see that here in this example, you also want to include that in the image. And so one of the things, we're big into B2B social these days over at Vindy, and we really like to put the headline in our featured image, because what ends up happening is when we promote that blog on LinkedIn, for example, that image gets carried over. And so that headline is visually there as well. But then we can also add alt text to that image and drop another clue with that key phrase in the alt text. So that's just another tip. Moving on down, we want to make sure that we have written our blogs in a way that is very skimmable. Most people skim blogs. They don't read blogs. They skim like the headlines and the subheads or the tips or whatever you're putting out there. And if they grab the attention of the reader, they might dig a little bit deeper. And so for sure, you want to make your blog very skimmable, but then also make all those key tips or all those steps, all those subsections, if you will, subheads. And so use H2s and H3s as a way. So don't just say, here's my 5 tips. Tip 1, I'm going to bold that. Tip 2, I'm going to bold that. Make those tips actually headings and subheadings, and you'll do much better, because when Google crawls your blog and they see a subhead, they'll go, oh, I bet this is an important topic, because they've made it a headline or a subheadline. And that works really well. So you can see in this example, we're giving multiple steps on how to deal with this issue, and each one of the steps is actually a headline. So we also want to embed a lot of different resources and other types of information and make that available to our readers. So it's always good to embed video. One of the things that we often do here at Vindy is we'll take these demand gen jam sessions or webinars, we'll slice them up into little micro segments. And then if that micro segment is valuable to the topic, we'll embed that right into our video. As you can see here is an example of that. Here's something you may not be aware of. We always include this or recommend this to our clients in their blogs, and it's a question answer snippet. You may not be aware of this, but 50%, over 50% of Google searches today actually don't resolve in them visiting your website. So somebody will go to Google, they'll type in a question, Google will answer the question right in their search results, and that person doesn't need to click over to your site. And so where does that information come from that Google uses to answer those questions? Well, it comes from us. And so if we present our information in a question answer format, then we've got a much higher probability that when somebody asks a question on Google related to a topic that we are writing about, that we will show up as the answer. And so whenever we write a blog for ourselves or one of our clients, we always include a question answer snippet to give us the best opportunity to do that. In fact, I was reviewing some executive summaries this week with our account team and saw some really good site links that were showing up in Google from us doing exactly this. So it's a really great tip just to get more exposure in Google. So here's just an example of that. So if you do a search for reasons for LinkedIn ads, you'll actually see Google using our answer in the blog as their answer to the question on Google. So that's how these Q&A snippets really work. All right, so moving on, we've talked about adding video, but other resources as well. So for example, this PowerPoint that I'm walking you through now, I'm sure will live on a blog someday. And I'm going to also walk you through a checklist here in a minute, and that will live on a blog and in our resource center. And then we'll make it available to everybody. And Google loves to see that because it's helping your reader. And once they know that you're helping your reader, they're going to reward you with better ranking. And then finally, we just need to have key takeaways at the end. And so once you've, kind of written your whole thought out, summarize with key takeaways. And here's an important little tip on that. Not only include the key points that you made in the blog, but in your headline for the takeaways section, also include the key phrase. And remember, Google's like a detective. They're trying to figure out, what is this web page about? What is this blog article about? And the more places you can communicate, this blog is about this topic, the better you'll do. And so I think it's okay. It doesn't feel not user-friendly to say, hey, these are our B2B social media marketing takeaways, right? So it's an okay place to put that key phrase and reinforce that key phrase in your blog article. So another thing that you want to do, and I've talked about the blog specifically, but realign the categories on your blog to be aligned with your content pillars. This is a change that we're making at Vindy right now based on this update, is we had a lot of categories, and now we're going to condense them down into our 5 content pillars. So the only categories that we're going to have on our website in our blog are actually going to be our 5 content pillars. And so everything that we write will then tie to our content pillars, and then those categories, each one of the categories on our website will have a content hub. Now, we already have content hubs. This is a screenshot of one on our website, which is where we just simply went in to each category homepage. Super easy to do if you're on a WordPress website. And we modified it to have a great user experience. Google crawls these category homepages just like they crawl your website. So it's a place that you can add on-page SEO and things like that. And we also want it to be an awesome user experience. And so this is just another way of really making your website more user-friendly and dropping some really good clues to Google. So the key point here is definitely have content hubs, but to maximize what's going on now, only have categories for your 3 to 5 content pillars moving forward. All right, so I'm going to walk you through kind of our content pillar framework, and then we'll jump into some other resources here. So I mentioned the 3 to 5 content pillars. That would be, what are the 3 to 5 things that you're truly an expert on? Those are the things that you should write about. That is the foundation of your content marketing strategy. And then from there, you want to build out multiple types of long form content. I'm getting a little bit outside of SEO here, but it all ties together. So we have our 3 to 5 content pillars that should inform our blogs, that should inform our webinars, our case studies, even these demand gen jam sessions that we do are informed by our 3 to 5 content pillars. So everything that we create at Vendy has to tie back to these pillars, and it needs to be the same for you. And once we have that long form content where people can do a deep dive on a topic, we can then slice that up, and those live on our website. We can then slice that up into different pieces of micro content. That could be infographics, that could be social posts. And then that information gets deployed out on all these other channels that aren't our website in channel appropriate formats. You know, one of the things I love about blogs, and obviously you can tell I'm a big fan of blogs, is that when you organize it the way that I just walked you through, and you've got these subsections, and each one of these subsections might be one of your tips. Like, let's say you've got a blog on 5 tips to do whatever, and each tip is its own subsection, then each subsection can then become a social media post, for example, or a video snippet, or a TikTok video, or something like that. So it all just makes our work so much easier when we start with these content pillars and really build out the long form that then creates our short form content. Okay, so Andrea, I'm going to switch back over to the agenda here and come up for air. Any questions that popped up related to specifically on-page SEO, blogging, and this Google helpful content update?
I don't see in the chat right now, but we do have a couple common questions that we typically get with blogs. And one of them is, how many words should you have in your blog?
Great question. So there really is no hard and fast answer on how many words should be on a blog. I think at the end of the day, we need to write for the user. We need to make sure that we answer their questions. We need to give them helpful information. And that needs to be really goal number one. And then, and not really try to stuff, you know, like, oh gosh, it's got to be 1,000 words. So I've got to add some paragraphs here to make it 1,000 words. So that's really, you know, point number one is serve the customer first. Now, when we get asked that question at Vendy, what we tell our clients is at least 1,000 words, or that's kind of a good target. And when we write blogs for our clients, we write them, you know, anywhere from 800 words to a couple of thousand words. There's been some research that's come out recently that says that words that are blogs or articles, I'm just going to say articles, that are 2,000 plus words rank better in Google than articles that are less than 2,000 words. So, you know, like I said, there's no hard and fast rule, but I kind of like to target around 1,000 for a blog. But again, serve the customer first. If you need to write it out in 2,000 words, do that. If it only takes 500 words, then don't stuff it with more words just to get a word count. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions, Andrea?
Yeah, kind of follow up, or another blog question is, how often should you blog?
Oh, great question. So, man, that has been all over the map. And so I think quality over quantity is really the key here. And so if you can really only write one awesome blog a month that answers one really important question or shows a customer how to do one really important thing, and it aligns to your content pillars and where you're a subject matter expert, then I would say write one a month. That's really, really great. Don't water it down by coming up trying to say, well, gosh, I got to write 3 or 4 blogs a month, or I got to write one a week, you know, 2 a couple a week, or whatever the case may be. Don't let that be your guide. Let the useful information be your guide. And so, you know, quantity isn't nearly as important as it used to be. And we can see that even by why Google's doing this update. So really focus on great quality content versus trying to hit some kind of quota in terms of number of blogs. Are we good, Andrea?
I think so, yep.
Okay, great. Keep the questions coming, guys. So I'm back on the agenda here. You guys can see that. I'm going to pull up this checklist that you can get to. And we literally just put the final touches on this yesterday. So I'm not going to go through this line by line. I just want to introduce you to it. So there's basically 2 sections of this checklist. The first one is a Q&A, yes or no kind of checklist. So some of these questions came right out of the Google announcement. We added some of these just based on what we're seeing going on in Google. But what I would encourage everybody on the jam session today is just go through this and just evaluate kind of your content strategy or blog strategy as it relates to these questions. And I'll just hit a couple so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So like the second question here, right here. Has the content been primarily written by a human rather than using extensive automation? This is a big problem that Google's dealing with right now. There's all these tools like Jasper out there that will do AI written content, and they can literally you can just plug in a blog and it'll rewrite that blog in new unique language. And that is just filling up the Google index with useless information. They're trying to fight that. I did do a little research on that. They're not saying don't use AI, but don't use AI to write the entire blog. You can use AI. I mean, even Grammarly, if you think about it, is a little bit of an AI. It just helps you reword things and refine your message. And I think that's fine. Just don't have AI write your entire blogs. And be careful if you're working with a content agency, because sometimes these content agencies will use AI to create blogs. And so you want to make sure that that the content you're producing is really good. So that's just an example of one. Is the content topic aligned with your site's primary purpose or focus? So there's, I think, 10 or 12 of them here. Just go through that. And that will give you some good feedback on how prepared you are for this algorithmic change. And then the second part are 10 tips. And we've covered a lot of these already in the slide presentation. There's just a little bit more information and links to some other resources here. So make sure that you're tied to content pillars, for example. This is a good one. I do want to touch on this. So really write to your niche. Understand who your ideal customer profile is and what are the segments within your ideal customer profile, and call them out in your articles. That will really help you rank well for that particular audience segment. So that's a good tip. And so you'll see, I think there's 10 of them here. So be sure to download that. If you've got any questions on it after you've downloaded it and read it, reach out to me directly. I'll be happy to schedule a planning session or something with you on that. But we're excited to have this. It's going to go up on our website later on this week, but you guys are getting it literally right off the presses here. So take advantage of that. The next thing here, I'm going back to the agenda, is I wanted to walk you through just an example blog, because I went through that slide deck, but I wanted you to see it actually in action here. And so you can see here's this blog. We kind of looked at this headline already. You saw the authorship that's there. You see that we've got some extra resources here. There's our key phrase in the hero image, or the featured image, if you will. And this particular blog, I think, is over 1,000 words. But then you can see here's that question answer snippet right here. Notice that we've got it indented and really highlighting it, that it is a question answer snippet. We found that works better. So you can see that. And then you'll also notice that we've got other resources embedded that we think are going to help the user. And we also have infographics. Now, sometimes we go and create infographics for a particular blog, but oftentimes I'll just go and screenshot a PowerPoint slide. So this is literally just a PowerPoint slide that we screenshotted. Notice that we've got a description down here of what it's about. That's, again, communicating to the search engines a clue that will help them. We've got a video embedded here. So this is a former Demand Gen Jam session on this particular topic. So again, we're trying to help the person out that's reading this as much as we can. We've even got some stats or trends here and linked out to people that where we did that research. So we're kind of curating useful information for the reader. And then we get into our steps, and you can see each one of these steps is a subhead. So there's step one. We've got some more embedded infographics that will, with captions and alt text, that'll help the reader. And then we just go through the process. You can see we've got lots of infographics in this one. And then at the very end, we have our key takeaways right here. So this is an example of, now this is kind of a long blog, but I use this one on purpose because it kind of walks you through all the different features and elements that you want to work into your blog in order to make it as search engine friendly based on this new update. And I showed you the Content Hub. Here's a link to that actual Content Hub. We're not going to go there, but you can check it out if you're interested to see what that really looks like and explore that a little bit more. And then some other resources that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on today, but one is, this actually came out of a LinkedIn post from this morning. Ryan, I don't know if you're on the session today, but I did a little post on SEO updates as it relates to this topic. And Ryan jumped in and said, hey, SparkToro is a great tool to help you research topics that are kind of top of the funnel. I don't know if Ryan, if you're here, why don't you chat into Andrea, and so she knows you're there, and you can unmute yourself and maybe expand on that a little bit. Do you see Ryan there, Andrea?
No, I do not see Ryan in here.
Okay. I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it today, but I told him I'd put it in there. But that's a great tool. I don't know if you guys are familiar with SparkToro, but Rand Fishkin, the guy that started SEO Moz, actually started SparkToro, and it is really a great research tool to help you understand, what are words and phrases that matter. It's not a key phrase research tool, but it's more of a topic research tool. Be sure to check it out. It will save you a bunch of time in figuring out what people actually care for you to write about. And then moving on down, I've got a blog that we wrote about a year ago on the last major update that Google came out with, which was the Core Web Vitals update. And so where this update was all about content and making sure that our content is useful to our audience, which is key. Last year, their major update was really about your architecture and making sure that your site is crawlable and loads fast. And so be sure to check out that blog if you're concerned about your site architecture. It'll give you some good tips there. And then here's just some articles that we found in researching this topic that I'm not going to go into today, but be sure to check those out. They'll help you as well. And then as we kind of wrap up here, just some general resources. The last two jam sessions that we did were all about activate your audience, and we broke that into, it was so much content that we had to break it into 2 months. And so I've got both replays here for you. I've also included the notes from last time. If you weren't able to make it, be sure to check that out. We did a webinar last month, and so it was all about demand generation and what to be doing now as you think about demand gen. You can watch that replay there. And then we've got a blog on how to activate your audience. SEO is part of activating your audience. How do we get our information in front of buyers when they're in research mode? And so you might want to check that out to understand, hey, SEO is one puzzle into this big puzzle piece, if you will, into this big mosaic. How do we fit all that in? So you may want to check that out. I know that's a ton of information, but one of the things we try to do every month when we have these jam sessions is just overwhelm you with value. So hopefully this will be something that you bookmark and come back to. All these resources we're going to make available in our community as well. So don't feel like you got to hold on to all these agendas. We're going to organize our new community over at Networked in a way for you to be able to access this stuff pretty easily. But I did want to drop them in for today. And I'm looking at the clock. Oh my gosh, it's 12:57. One thing that we promise is that we will always end on time. And so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap for today. If anybody has any hot potato issues and you need some help, reach out to me directly, or better yet, go join our Demand Gen Jammers group. There's a link on our agenda to do that, and pose it to the group that way. And that's a way for us to stay connected in between these jam sessions. And just remember, next month, November, we'll be getting together and we'll be focusing all on building a 2023 digital marketing strategy and budgeting for that. And we'll give you a bunch of tips that'll help with that. So other than that, guys, thanks a lot for joining us today. I always love doing these. Sorry for the fire hose, but it was a lot of information to go through. We've given you these great resources. I hope they help. And if you've got any questions afterwards, please reach out. Happy to help any way that we can. Until next month, you guys have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. Take care, everybody.